Good afternoon, everyone. During my time on campus, I've invested myself in contributing to a better undergraduate experience. As a floor coordinator and a hall vice president in Lister, I created an inclusive atmosphere in the community so that students excelled. As your vice president student life, I negotiated to reduce the proposed price of the UPass. When I was concerned about student mental health, I worked to create puppy rooms. And as your president, I will work to ensure that your voice continues to be heard, whether it be on issues like residence changes or student fees. I have tangible experience working on both of these issues, unlike the other candidates, and have been a representative for ongoing priorities such as the SU Health and Dental Plan and the Sub-Renovations Project. I have delivered on my previous campaign promises and continue to be accountable to students. As president, I will continue to fight rent increases and to erode the mandatory nature of the meal plan. I will continue to champion mental health issues with expanded programming and activities during reading week. I have heard students who are concerned about environmental and social sustainability, and I plan to initiate a sub-food court waste audit and engage in consultation for the creation of gender-neutral washrooms in sub to create a more inclusive and accepting atmosphere. This past year as an SU executive, I have proven myself and have taken tangible action to ensure that my goals are accomplished. As president, I will continue to be accountable and accessible to students. Voting this Wednesday and Thursday for me, Saadiq Sumar, to be your next president ensures that students' concerns will not only be heard, but acted on. Thank you.
All right. So the first question we have today is a general question that we'll be asking to those later on. In terms of the goals that you've set, the attainability of goals is often more important than the quantity of goals that you've set. How realistic do you think that your goals are that you've set for next year? And can you give us specific platform points pertaining to those goals?
Sure. In terms of my platform, I have three major platform points that I outlined in my speech. In terms of the third one, which is sustainability, doing the food court waste audit, working to do consultation on gender-neutral washrooms, and implementing a sexual, minority, and gender diversity service. I think all three of those are very tangible goals for the upcoming year. In terms of health initiatives, I know that a lot of students like to get very involved in the health and wellness team and the health and wellness movement, as well as various other health groups, and I'd like to capitalize on that and work with them to provide better mental health services during Health Week, but also working with the Office of the Dean of Students in providing better mental health services in general for students, like puppy rooms. In terms of reducing rent, this is something that I've already done this past year in terms of mandatory non-instructional fees, making sure that those are at an acceptable level for students is something that I also worked on this year. And I'd like to work with the Vice President External to make sure that we continue to work on MNIFs this year. So.
All right, is there any follow-up from the audience? No? Okay. So the Gateway, the U of A's official news source, has had many criticisms of the SU this year. How do you plan to work more cooperatively with the Gateway next year? And if you don't, do you plan to work with any other new news sources that may have cropped up?
I think generally it's important to make sure that the SU is getting the word out to students about whatever it is they're doing. I think one thing we could improve on with the Gateway is making sure, in terms of collaborative efforts, that we're always informing them of what's going on with the Students' Union. In terms of developing a more collegial relationship with them, I'm not 100% sure about that, just because I think it's the Gateway's role, just like the Wanderers' role, or the Lighthouse in Lister, or Le Mouton Noir on CSJ, to make sure that they're holding students accountable. And I'm not necessarily sure if making sure that we have a collegial relationship with the Gateway would be a detriment or would be beneficial to making sure that we are kept accountable for what we have promised to our students. The Gateway is supposed to be informative, supposed to tell students what's going on, and like I said, one of those things is to make sure that the exec, any of the people who are elected, any of the Board of Governors representative, are held accountable to what they have said during their campaigns.
Okay. So I don't know if this is part of your platform, but the Gateway ran a deficit this year. How do you plan to deal with that in the future? Since we pay for it.
Unfortunately, I don't have experience sitting on the Gateway's board. That would be a better question for Board of Governors Representative Kelly, or even potentially incoming Vice President of Operations and Finance Josh Lay. Or even Petros might have a better answer to this question. But I'm hoping that with some changes ongoing with online advertising, that the Gateway can use that more effectively to create more sources of revenue for them. I know that their print is going down, which means that they could save some money on print, but they could also be making much more on online revenue. So I think those two combined hopefully will mean that the Gateway isn't facing a deficit next year.
All right, are there any audience questions at this point? That's fine, I have a whole list. So, did you meet with any student group executives before the campaign period? And if you did not, do you plan on making it part of your goals for next year?
I absolutely did. I sent an email to every single student group, so about 400 to 450 student groups. And I think the one problem that we really need to work on in terms of making sure that we engage with student groups is that student groups are actually willing to reply to our emails. I think out of the 450 or so that I talked to, or that I emailed initially, only about 50 got back to me. So I think it's important for potentially the VPSL to make sure that we continue to have a face with student group executives. Now with certain student groups like faculty associations, like the Greek community, like residence associations, it's important for every member of the executive to be very closely related to those groups so that we can better represent their views. Their views aren't just limited to the VPSL portfolio, they also extend to all the different portfolios. So it's important that we continue to foster a very positive relationship with student groups in general.
All right. Now, how do you plan on working with other executives in a way that enhances both your portfolios instead of competing for getting kind of the ownership of certain goals and ideas to kind of boost your own portfolio?
I think one person that I've worked really well with this year is the Vice President Academic current, as well as running for re-election, Dustin Shell, and I think we've worked quite well on certain goals that we've had. And I think it's just important for each exec to make sure that we support each other in our goals. I think it's even more important for the president to support their executive, because I think at the end of the day, the president is supposed to be the person who knows their portfolio or what's going on in their portfolio the second best. The best person to know what's going on, obviously, is the individual vice president. But I think, I hate to say this, but I'm a real team player. I don't like to be really cheesy, but honestly, I don't like taking credit for things, especially when other people have worked quite hard on them. And I think whenever an executive will have accomplished one of their goals, even if it's with my help, I'll give most of the credit to that executive or even to our SU staff who have accomplished those goals.
All right. Are there any questions from the audience? Or any of the other candidates?
What challenges do you foresee working with the other portfolios, MVPs?
I think in terms of, I think the biggest challenge coming into any year as a president is to provide a healthy balance between the vision that I or Petros or Horse with a Gun will provide to the Students' Union, balancing that with the goals that have been presented by the executive. I think this will be an important year for the Students' Union in that this is a year where we will be renewing our strategic plan. We'll be working on big projects like the sub-renovation, like the SU Health and Dental Plan. And I think it's a really good opportunity to shape the vision of the Students' Union. And I think we're hoping that working with the executive team next year, we can develop that vision together, but also work to make sure that most, if not all, of our platform points and promises and campaign promises and goals are accomplished, whether it's within that year or making sure that the next executive team is a quick win for them, which is what I've tried to do all year this year with Dustin, with Petros, with Colton, and with Andy. I think we've worked quite well together.
All right, and I have a final question for you. What is it about SU culture that makes it difficult and kind of a disincentive for women to run?
I think that's a very interesting question, but I think when we consider what the SU is doing to limit themselves, I don't think we should just limit the discussion to women. I think we really need to expand that conversation to all different minority groups. I think we not only need to look at women, but also maybe some Aboriginal students, maybe some members of the LGBTQ community, some members, all members of faculty associations. I think we need to look at all of these groups of students and figure out what are the barriers to making sure that those students go out there and get involved. And I think one of the things that the last executive did well, that this executive hasn't really done as well, is going out and just talking to students and convincing them to run for executive positions, encouraging them to work off of their strengths and run, because at the end of the day, whether you win or lose, it's a tremendous experience in terms of personal growth.
All right, thanks for coming out today. Saadiq's going to now leave to go make it to the other official forum.